Hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making headlines with the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and the deputy comment editor at the Telegraph, Annabel Denham. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. And we'll start with the front page of the Metro, which leads with the vigil held for the 2 students killed in Nottingham. Thousands turned up to support the grieving families of Grace O'Malley Kumar and Barnaby Webber. A similar headline for the Daily Express, which describes the mood at the vigil as one of numb and comprehending grief. The Daily Mail focuses on the emotional speeches made by both of the victims' fathers. The Times picks out a quote from Grace's father where he encouraged mourners to look after each other and love everyone. The Guardian reports on a groundbreaking scientific advance where scientists have sidestepped the need for eggs and sperm by creating a synthetic embryo using stem cells. The Daily Telegraph reports on Boris Johnson calling for Sir Bernard Jenkin to be removed from the Privileges Committee over his alleged lockdown rule-breaking. That's an image from Silvio Berlusconi's funeral on the front of the Financial Times, which also says there's pressure on the Prime Minister over increasing mortgage rates. And mortgages on the front of the I2, which says the Tories risk losing the support of homeowners. And there's an AI warning from Elon Musk on the front of the Daily Star. And a reminder, by scanning the QR codes you see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch along with us. All right, well, tonight we're joined by Kevin Maguire and Annabel Denham. There they are in the big screen. Good evening to you both, Kevin, Annabel. Great to have you with us. And we'll start with the front page of the Metro, Kevin. And as we said, a number of papers tomorrow covering that vigil in Nottingham and these families' grief. There for everyone to see.
No, absolutely incredibly moving scenes. The Metro have gone for the headline "United in Love." That's the love of their children, 2 grieving families, and the father spoke so movingly, as did others. And it's almost impossible. The only people who will really know how they feel are those who've suffered something similar, because it's beyond the comprehension of most of us to lose a child in such a violent, horrific way. But it's how do those families cope? How does the students' friends, family, and also the friends and family of Ian, 65, the school caretaker who was also murdered in his van taken. How do they cope? And that's the big question. But people are incredibly resilient. But listening to the fathers speak, Barnaby say doesn't know how he'll deal with it, and Grace's dad pictured there saying, look after each other. It's just kind of really shocking that it happened. But it's now how do we as people respond and deal with it.
Yeah, let's look at the front of the Mail if we can now, Annabel, as we talk about those 2 fathers who just showed incredible strength to be able to talk just a day after losing their children. As Kevin said, it was so emotional, so touching, and really painful to kind of hear the raw emotion that these guys are going through.
Absolutely, it's just awful. And I think everyone's thoughts are with those grief-stricken families. Like Kevin says, it's simply beyond every parent's worst nightmare. It's impossible to imagine. And I think that this trauma will be felt so widely. Thousands of students attending that vigil. And like you say, I think so staggered really at the courage and composure of those 2 fathers so soon after this very violent attack. And I think, I was really struck by how this was happening to kids at university. This is often the first time that people are away from their families, and indeed the first time that parents are sending their children away. And this is simply the absolute last thing that you would expect to have happen. And now, as time passes, I think people are going to want explanations. They're going to want answers. We cannot understand, we cannot fathom why this happened. We're only beginning to learn details about the murder suspect. And, I think we simply want to know what it was that led to this absolutely heinous act.
And Kevin, do you think there are going to be those questions to be asked about the person who's responsible? Of course, there is someone in custody at the moment, arrested on suspicion of murder, to try and find out exactly what's transpired that meant that a person like this was able to carry out this kind of act.
Yeah, there has to be a person in custody. The police say they're not looking for anybody else, and you've got to understand. We've got to understand why whoever did this. I know there is a legal process here. Why whoever did this did it, and where there are opportunities to stop them doing it, that was somehow missed. I don't intend to, or mean to blame anybody on that, but maybe lessons can be learned, because it is just absolutely appalling how somebody could murder 3 people, 2 students, a man 65 still working, use his van to run over 3 other people, one of whom is critically injured. It's just terrible. It is beyond the comprehension of most of us. We have to get our heads around it, understand why it happened, and how it might, I say might, have been prevented. All those questions have to be asked.
Yeah, they do. Perhaps lessons to be learned. A number of families shattered by what happened in Nottingham yesterday. Right, let's move on to some of the politics that are on the front pages now. And Annabel, let's start off with you. The front page of the Eye here. There's the headline: Tories losing support from home owners as Hunt backs new rate hike. Talk us through the reporting here.
Sure. So this is new polling for the Eye. It's suggesting that homeowners are turning away from the Conservatives. I don't think that this is altogether surprising. Let's not forget that when Rishi Sunak came into number 10, the impression that he gave was one of quiet competence, that he and Jeremy Hunt would be very safe hands on the tiller, and now it looks very much like they have lost control of the economy. What we are seeing is banks freezing off some of their offers, perhaps raising mortgage rates in response to the expectation that there will be interest rate increases. And why are those expectations changing? Well, it's off the back of this very sticky inflation that we've seen, despite Rishi Sunak pledging that inflation would be halved by the end of the year. It is remaining stubbornly high. And earlier this week, we had ONS labour market data that found that wage growth has gone up by 7%. Now, this is still a reduction in real terms, but is nonetheless an absolutely massive number. And it renews fears that we now find ourselves in some kind of wage price spiral, where prices on the shelves are going up. So people are then going to be demanding pay raises in order to fund it, which in turn is going to lead to companies needing to increase their prices in order to meet those pay demands. And you can see how you get into that spiral, which Jeremy Hunt, which Rishi Sunak, which Andrew Bailey are all absolutely terrified of. And, as the Eye is pointing out, this is simply something that the Tories cannot ignore. They are going to pay for this at the next general election unless they can find a way to grow the economy, to cut taxes, and to bring down inflation. It's not exactly within Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak's gift. It's very much the responsibility of the Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England, but nonetheless it looks like the most senior members of our government are throwing their weight behind the decisions that the MPC will be making.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that wage price spiral, Kevin, because that is what has always been feared and what's been talked about. But Kevin, as you know, and I saw you shaking your head at some of that, there is another way of doing this. And if we look at what's happened in the States right now, they've paused the rate rises. They've managed to get inflation under control. So there are other factors, and the comparisons don't often work. I mean, Annabel said, that was a promise by Rishi Sunak to bring inflation down. It's remaining sticky. It's maybe going up, and rates are rising as well.
No, absolutely. And next week, expected to go up again with Jeremy Hunt backing it. And The FT, rather similarly to the I, are pointing out Sunak's going to feel the heat on this because they are rapid mortgage rises, dominating Prime Minister's questions. Keir Starmer basically saying, Sunak's been distracted, all this nonsense with Johnson and Honours. But the HSBC's put up cost of borrowing twice a week. It's worth remembering that in December 2021, as recently as then, interest rates were 0.1%, the base rate. It's now 4.5%, and it's going to go higher. That's an extraordinary rise. Mm. And it's quite right that inflation eats into the value of your wages. Wages are chasing inflation. Inflation is not, wages aren't creating the inflation. It's wages are chasing inflation. But it damages your living standards, high inflation, but so do higher mortgage interest rates as they take your spending power away. So it's kind of people are under assault from two directions when you've got inflation, what you buy is going up in price, and then your mortgages, your car loans, your credit cards, they're going up too.
And Annabel, you kind of touched on it a little bit in your answer there, the sort of the criticism coming from some of the Conservative Party towards the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee. But, I mean, my thought on this is, as rates keep going up, are we going to start seeing other parts of the political divide perhaps questioning the way that the Bank of England have been raising rates? There was a question that perhaps they should have got a hold of this earlier and didn't act quickly enough, and those criticisms sort of are lingering, aren't they now?
Yes, and in fact, I think the government was quite slow to criticise the Bank of England for having extremely loose monetary policy for far too long. And, the Bank of England has had a bit of a communications disaster ever since it allowed this massive increase in the broad supply of money during the coronavirus pandemic. Andrew Bailey has been very quick to blame workers, or particularly older workers who've decided to retire. He's criticised those who've asked for pay rises, which I think is frankly immoral. People should go to their employer and try and get the best pay that they possibly can. He criticised some companies for their pricing structures, and I think it's really time that the Bank of England took responsibility. It was in a very difficult position during the pandemic. It was under immense pressure to print money so that the government could fund support packages such as the £70 billion furlough scheme, but that doesn't explain why it was so slow to wake up to the inflationary threat and to suggest for a really long time that it was transitory. I think we all know now, here we are in June 2023, that inflation is not transitory. It's very damaging for the Bank of England. What it needs more than anything else is to restore credibility. Only then will expectations of interest rates rises come down, once people have realised or at least expect that the Bank of England will get inflation under control. But until that point, we are going to see banks making these sorts of moves, increasing mortgage rates, perhaps pulling deals off the market. And for Rishi Sunak, like the front of the Financial Times says, this is extremely awkward. Let's not forget that it was fears about a mortgage time bomb that contributed to the ousting of Liz Truss. And now the cost of government borrowing is higher than it was after Truss's mini budget. So the question will be, does Rishi Sunak face similar risks? I think it's unlikely, but undoubtedly he is in a very uncomfortable position indeed.
And Kevin, a quick thought from you on where the Labour Party will position themselves on this. That I haven't yet heard sort of criticism of the Bank of England coming from people in the shadow Treasury in the Labour Party. But where will they position themselves, considering the fact that in 18 months' time they actually could be in power?
Yeah, politically it suits Labour to attack the UK Conservative government, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, as well as Liz Truss, but they want to pin it on the current politicians. That's why I think they're not having a go at the Bank of England. But there's no doubt the Bank of England has been slow. There's a big splurge of inflation after energy prices went through the roof, as did food prices after the Putin invasion of Ukraine. You can't blame the UK Conservative government for that, but you can complain or critique its handling of the crisis. But no, it suits Labour to go for the politicians rather than the bank.
Annabel, desperate Johnson hits out at Tory MPs, laid into Sir Bernard Jenkin. Why?
Yes, so he is calling for the Brexit supporting Conservative grandee Sir Bernard Jenkin to resign. This is following him allegedly attending an event to mark his wife's 65th birthday, at which there were drinks and, yes, cake, in December 2022 when indoor socialising was banned in London. Sir Bernard Jenkins has denied attending a drinks party. An ally has said that no rules were broken. This feels like Boris Johnson is slightly clutching at straws. I'm not sure that there's been that much widespread sympathy for the idea that this was a kangaroo court, even if it did at times feel as though it was rigged against him. The fundamental fact remains that Boris Johnson has resigned with immediate effect. Very few sanctions will be able to be imposed on him once the Privileges Committee report has been published, which is obviously expected tomorrow. I think this just represents yet more blue on blue attacks, more mudslinging, which has been going on for years now. It's been going on since the end of 2021, if not before. It became particularly bitter during the Conservative leadership contest last summer. And frankly, I think the public are tired of it. And what will be really telling is whether Conservative MPs are tired of it as well, because there will be a debate on Monday on whether to accept the report's findings. Downing Street has decided not to whip the vote, and Tory MPs are going to be free to cast ballots against Boris Johnson after. And let's see what they decide. Are they now just desperate to draw a line under the whole saga? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Kevin, is it just blue on blue? Because what's happening here is that Boris Johnson is once again attempting to undermine the integrity of this committee, which feels more than just mudslinging to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, he was toppled as Prime Minister. He's chucked his toys out the pram and quit as an MP, probably jumped before he was pushed by this committee, and he will. He'll go to his grave doing a baby Trump with a temper tantrum, saying it's all against me. The blob, the committee has got it in for me, which of course is nonsense when they've just looked at the evidence. There's 7 of them. I understand the report was agreed unanimously. It's a Tory majority. 4, you take off Bernard Jenkins and it wouldn't make any difference anyway. But what he doesn't grasp, Johnson, is the committee isn't fined him in contempt of Parliament and lying and recklessly misleading the House of Commons because he went to a party. It's because he denied he went to a party and lied that he went to a party and he broke the rules. That's what it's all about. So the comparison with Bernard Jenkins doesn't wash anyway, despite the fact Bernard Jenkins is denying anything. It is because Johnson denied and lied to MPs in the House of Commons. That's why he is in such deep trouble. And he still can't get it into his head. I think he's always created his own reality, his own false reality, his fantasy. I suppose it's what some of Trump's supporters would call alternative facts. That's what he's always grasping for, and the truth just gets lost.
OK. Final thought, Annabel, to you. Different story, not related in the slightest. Silvio Berlusconi on the front of the Financial Times being laid to rest, and quite a turnout in Milan.
Yes, that's right. And it does seem that he divided opinion in life and he has divided opinion in death. It seemed like a very fitting funeral for Silvio Berlusconi. It was attended by his lovers and an ex-wife, his girlfriend, 53 years his junior. And I rather like the quote from the Archbishop of Milan, who said during his homily that Silvio Berlusconi was certainly a figure who acquired notoriety. What a diplomatic statement that was. But, obviously Berlusconi, he was a towering presence in Italian life for 3 decades, one of the most recognisable and notorious figures on the international stage.
OK, Annabel, Kevin, appreciate that both. Thank you very much.